When you think of network-attached storage, you probably picture that huge expensive box filled with those noisy hard drives, I guess. But today I'm going to show you a very surprising alternative that probably already lives right in your desk drawer. It's likely that you already have hardware, maybe not exactly like this one, but very similar, and it's buried somewhere under that pile of the cables you're definitely going to use one day, yes? And this is my old Android TV box, and we are going to repurpose it into an extremely energy efficient NAS. Because this specific box is HK1, whatever. It has quad-core Amlogic S905X3 processor. It has 4 GB of RAM and 64 GB of internal storage. But it draws less than 4 watts of power, making it perfect set and forget like low power server for your home. And don't worry if you don't have this exact model, it doesn't really matter. As long as you have similar Android box and a spare microSD card, then you can follow along. And also don't worry if your Android box has even few cores and less RAM, because with this setup we are going to run Armbian Linux. And the minimum requirements for Armbian Linux is actually just half a gig of RAM and just 1 core CPU, and any of them will have probably more than that. So it looks like this little box is already an overkill for our today's project. And regarding connectivity, this box has 2 USB ports, it has microSD port, Ethernet and HDMI. I first connected it to the internet and to my monitor just to check if it still works, but it looks like it does. It even picked up the date and time and displays the default Android application that is installed on this box. And the great thing about this box is it draws just between 3.5 and 4 watts, which is, I think, it's amazing. Because remember, we have 4-core CPU, some RAM, some internal storage, everything runs and draws under 4 watts of power. Okay, but let's transform it into a network-attached storage. We need a microSD card, and that SD card should be at least 8 GB in size, I would say. I've got 128 GB, but I don't have any smaller than that. So if you find any 8 GB of larger SD card, you will be sorted. But we need also a device like laptop, PC, mini PC, whatever, that you can use to flash that card with the operating system. And the operating system we are going to use is called Armbian, which is based on Debian operating system, but it's created specifically for devices with ARM processor, like my Amlogic processor in this little device. And what we need to do, we have to download this software first, and you have to find a device that matches either your processor or your model. And for me, the closest thing I could find is this Amlogic S905X3 TV box, because my box is based on that processor. It's S905X3 processor, but this is close enough, I would say. Also bear in mind that this is not the only project that lets you run Linux on the Android TV box. But I believe Armbian is the most popular one, and it has the best forum and the best support. That's why I'm going with this one. So I just click on this, and notice that you have 2 versions available. One with desktop, and the other one is minimal. And we don't really want to run desktop version. Look at that, it's like 3 times larger in size, and it will also be heavier for your device. If you go with minimal one, it barely uses any resources, and it's great for a single purpose operating system, like for example network attached storage. I don't need to run full desktop environment on this box. And you can find some documentation already there on that website, but I also have another link which is extremely helpful in my particular case for Android boxes with S9XX Amlogic processors, and I will actually follow this guide to get this Linux installed. And you will find the link in the comments as well. They say that generally BalenaEtcher is recommended, so that's what we are going to use to flash our microSD card. And then you can see further instructions about editing that little file, extlinux.conf, but you will see step by step how it should be done. But as I said, my steps are based on that particular instruction. So we go back, we say direct download, and we download this minimal image for Armbian. And you can see it's just 295 MB when compressed. So we have to extract it first, we have to unzip it, yes. On Windows you can use WinRAR, on Mac you can just double click it. I mean, on Windows you can also just right click and unzip it, that's not a problem. We simply need unzipped version of this image. Now I will run BalenaEtcher and I will say flash from file. And I will choose that file that I've just downloaded and unzipped. Here in Select Target, I will choose my microSD card, but if you have multiple external storages attached right now, then make sure you choose the correct one, because this process erases all the data on that particular storage device. I have only one, so I'm fine. It's only this one microSD card, so I say flash. The flash process will start, it will flash the card, and then we will also validate if everything is correct. And now, the thing is, we have to change some settings on this microSD card, but Windows by default will not be able to read anything of that card because that card has Linux file system, and Windows can't read by default Linux file systems. So you either have to connect this card to a Linux operating system, or you could use, for example, in Windows, there is a tool called Windows Subsystem for Linux. And only when I started editing this video, I realized I did probably the most stupid thing I could to show you the process, because I connected it to my Proxmox server. And Proxmox server is also Linux based, is Debian based, but what I mean, there are a million ways of doing it, and probably connecting this card to Proxmox is not the best approach. But honestly, it doesn't matter. You can use Windows WSL, you can use any Linux operating system, or you can even install extension to your operating system so it directly can read Linux operating system file systems. I hope that makes sense. So while I'm on the Proxmox, these steps will be basically exactly the same for any Linux operating system, alright? I run lsblk, which means list block devices, and I can see my card, my microSD card. It is listed here as device SDB. I can see it's 128 gig in size, and the first partition, SDB1, is so-called boot partition, and that's what we really need. To be able to read what's inside, we have to mount it first. We have to mount that SDB1 partition. And to mount this partition, I first have to decide where I want to mount it. I need a folder on this Proxmox that I can use to mount this partition on my microSD card. So I will create folder Marek inside media folder, and then I can run mount device SDB1, which is partition 1 on my microSD card, and I can mount it to my media Marek folder. And now, if I go to that media Marek folder, I should be able to see entire content of that SDB1 partition on my microSD card. And we can already see some items mentioned in that instruction, like these u-boot files. And according to that instruction, I have to change that name of this file to u-boot.ext. So what I will do, I will simply copy this file as another one called u-boot.ext. So if I need the original, it's still there, because I will work only on a copy of this file. Let me clear that maybe. And now the next step involves that DTB directory which is folder basically. Let's get into that DTB folder, and we can see another folder called Amlogic. And if we go to that Amlogic and list all the items, we will find loads and loads of DTB files. And we need to use just one of them. And which one you are going to use will depend on the device you have at home. You might need to Google a bit, or you might even want to try, like physically try some of them to see if they work with your particular device. For me, I was lucky maybe, because I Googled a bit and I found out that this Mason SML X96 RG-bit should work with my box. And it worked indeed, you will see. So maybe I was the lucky one, but if particular file doesn't work with your box, simply try another file. And what to do with this file? Well, we will just copy the name of it. Let me clear again maybe. And then we will go to that extlinux folder, and we've got two files here. One is called extlinux.conf, and the other is extlinux.conf.template. If we check that template, this template should show us the example of what this file should look like. The only thing we have to change here is that line with fdt and then that path to this file. The path is already there, it just contains different DTB file. We just have to change this one little line, but not in this template file, but in main.conf file. So I say nano extlinux.conf, and now I paste the name of the file that I found in that other folder. The full path to it is dtb amlogic, and that was the name of my file. I say Ctrl O, enter Ctrl X to save this file, and if I run cat extlinux.conf, you will see that line has changed indeed to what we need. Now we can unmount this partition. I say u-mount media marek. Note that there is no n, you just say u-mount, not unmount, okay? Now we can insert this card. This card is now ready for our Android TV box. We just insert it, and we have to start this box booting from this microSD card. And to boot from microSD card, we need to have reset button pressed. So we simply power it up with the reset button pressed, but that was really tricky to find one on this particular device, because these Android boxes often have that reset button very well hidden. And in my particular box, the reset button is in the mini jack port, at the very bottom of that mini jack port. I took very long toothpick. Again, you might ask, Marek, how did you find out? Well, I googled it. So you have to figure out. Maybe your box, maybe it has reset button right there, visible, you just press it, yes? For my box it was tricky to find one. But at least you can clearly hear it clicking when you press it. So I now connect my Android box. I connect keyboard and mouse to it, although mouse is not needed really. But I connected it anyways. And then HDMI cable. And as I said, you start this box with the reset button pressed. And I kept that reset button pressed for around 15-20 seconds until my monitor flashed for a moment. It looked like it tried to boot, but it couldn't. So I then released that button, and that's when it started booting from this microSD card. And you can see this exact process. It's booting up from microSD right now. Here you can see some very important data. This is the IP address of our box, and you have to write it down somewhere because that's what you need to SSH to this box later on. And next one is the root password. We have to create one. So it can be whatever you want, but you have to create root password. It will be password for root user. Then you have to repeat it to make sure it's exactly the same. And next, it will ask you to create a user, which is another user. First one is root, but this box requires another user, at least one. That's where you create both username and password. So for username, I just say Marek, and then the password for this Marek user. And you have to repeat that one as well, just to make sure you have it right. And now just some questions, like your time zone, if it's correct, your location. Here it says, at your location, more locally, so I'm not sure how it's pronounced, are possible. For me it's EN, as I am in the UK, in England, so that would be the closest to what I need. And that's it. Look at that. Our Android box is running Armbian Linux. You can see it just uses 5%, even though it's just 4 gig, you would say, oh, just 4 gig? Look at that, it uses just 5% of those 4 gig. The memory card is utilized only in 2%, but it's 128 gig. And you can see some very useful commands. And we will actually go through them. Armbian-config, armbian-upgrade, and htop. And if I run, for example, df-h, that will show me more information about my storage, like about my microSD card. And if we run top command, which is basically older version of htop command, that also works as expected. I can also run cat etc os release just to get more information about this operating system. And we can see that indeed it's Debian-based operating system. This Armbian is Debian-based. And at this stage, you can disconnect the HDMI cable. You can also disconnect the keyboard and mouse, or whatever you had connected to that USB ports, because now we should be able to SSH to that TV box from any other device on our network. And in fact, you can utilize now those USB ports for external storage. You can connect external USB or even SSD drives, so you will end up with terabytes of space available for your new NAS. But we will keep the thing simple though. I'm not going to connect anything, I want to show you that you can SSH now from anything on your network. Like this is my Ubuntu virtual machine, and I can just open the terminal, and I say SSH Marek, because remember, we have password. We can actually SSH as user root or user Marek, because we created password for user root, and we also created new user with its own password, which was user Marek. So I will connect as user Marek to then the IP address of my server, which is 192.168.1.16. That's the TV box. It got IP address from my DHCP server, and I press enter, and it asked me for password. So I say This is my password, and we are logged on to our box. S9XX box, it's called. The usage is just 2% of my memory card, and we can see memory usage is also very low. The CPU temp is pretty high, I would say, 50 degrees, but I'm not doing anything yet, so maybe the cooling is not the greatest. But what I want to show you, let's maybe jump on yet another virtual machine. Like this is my Kali Linux, and we can also use terminal, and I can SSH from here as user root, for example, at 192.168.1.16. And it also asks me for password. This is the password we created for user root, which might be different to the other one, but we also can see the same information, and we can also see that configuration, upgrade and monitoring. But maybe before we do, let me clear and let me run ls-blk, list block devices. And this is it. This is my microSD card, which is detected as MMC block device. We can see it 128 gig. And this is the boot partition. That's what we changed. 512 meg is the boot partition where we changed those files, that dbt and u-boot. And the remaining part was automatically expanded by the system, because I've got 117 gig available on this SD card. And the other one, BLK1, is actually the eMMC memory that is built into this TV box. This TV box comes with 64 gig of memory built in, where the operating system was already installed, the Android one, with the YouTube application, etc. Yes? So at this stage, what I mean, because we are running now this device from SD card, yes, which is pretty slow, and this internal memory will be much faster. What you can do, you can use those previous commands like armbian-config, and you will see many tools available for you for that Armbian. And one of them, I believe it would be under the system, is a tool that would let you move the operating system from the SD card to that internal storage. So you no longer run this box from the SD card. You can run it using that fast internal storage. But I'm not going to do that, because remember, right now, if you remove that micro SD card, this box is still able to simply boot from the previous operating system. So you still can use it as Android TV box. And when you insert the SD card, then you can boot it from this Armbian. But if you want it, that's your choice, you know. You can move the operating system from SD card to internal storage. But let's exit that. And the first thing I want to do is I want to update the repositories. I will just say sudo, no, sorry, I don't need sudo, I'm already root. I say just apt update. And in my case, I would subconsciously run apt upgrade, yes? But that might be not the best idea here. We might be better off using that other option that was listed at the very beginning, Armbian upgrade. This will upgrade the packages specific for this Armbian version. So why not use apt upgrade? Because you might upgrade the kernel or other components that are not fully compatible with this Armbian. Just pulling the newest packages might actually mess up this system. Armbian upgrade would be advisable command to run as the next one to upgrade the packages. Let's try. I will press enter, and the packages are now being upgraded. It's clear that the last command we saw, htop, is basically a newer version of top command that we ran previously already. If I press enter, you can see that we've got 4 cores, 4 CPUs, yes, the memory utilization, and it's very low, it's just 187 meg out of 4 gig used, and the swap file, 2 gig swap file, which is not used at all. So this system generally runs pretty well. It needs very little resources right now. But alright, maybe let's swap to Ubuntu. I think I liked, Ubuntu, I think it's clearer and more visible than in Kali Linux. Let's clear here as well, the terminal. But now let's make NAS out of this little box. And I will install and run Samba on it, because it's a bit easier than NFS to configure. And to install Samba, I simply run sudo apt install Samba. Sudo password. And even better, Samba is already running on this box, and it's even in newest version. That's fine. Samba creates a configuration file. If we go to etc Samba and we run lsl, we will see that smb.conf file. That's the default configuration, and it's pretty long output. It's good to read, if you want to understand how to configure that conf file, but I have prepared a template already. So I will simply move this file, smb.conf, to smb-conf old. I need sudo for that as well. And if we run systemctl status smbd, which is Samba daemon, we can see it's running, so I will stop it. I will clear that first, and I say stop. Again sudo, sorry. I keep forgetting I'm user Marek here, not root. Never mind. Oh, that's a good point actually. If we run who am I, that will give you the name of the user you are currently using. I SSH'd as user Marek to this box, Android box. That's why it shows me Marek. And that's pretty important for the next step, because we can run now nano smb.conf. We will create new config file here in etc Samba. I will press enter. I can't believe I did it again. You can see directory is not writable. I press Ctrl X because I need sudo here as well. Basically what it means, everything here, if we run lsl, everything here is owned by user root. So if I want to add, change, do anything here, I need sudo privileges. Now I can paste it. I haven't tested this template on this box yet. It's based on my previous configuration from different system, but I believe it should be fine. But you can see what I'm trying to do. Our path will be my home directory on Android box. My home directory is home Marek, and well, we will have to create this folder. I haven't created this folder yet. This will be the location where all our files will go. If we copy something to this Android box, they will go to this home Marek shared folder. I am allowing guests as well. And force user force group, it says Marek because in my home folder everything belongs to user Marek, and I want to keep it the same way. That's why I use this. Let's see. I will press Ctrl O, enter, Ctrl X to write it. So if I run cat smbd, this is my new config, and now if I go to cd home Marek lsl, sorry. Currently is nothing here. I have to create this folder shared, alright? So I say make directory shared, or if I wanted to create full path, that would be -p, home Marek shared. That's maybe even clearer. We are creating this path, yes? I press enter, and because I'm already in home Marek, if I run lsl again, you can see this folder shared has been created. But this is what I mean. This folder belongs to user Marek, to group Marek. That's why in my config I placed this. What it means, if you run command who am I and your user is, I don't know, Paul, then you force user Paul here and group Paul there, yes, because this folder will belong to Paul. I hope that makes sense. And now that should be it. I think there is a testparm. 1 second. Oh, yeah, that's it. It will test parameters. Basically, it will check if what I wrote here is correct. It will check that Samba config. If something was wrong, it would tell me that no, this template is not correct. But it says loaded services file is okay. I will just press Ctrl C. And at this stage, I will be able to use this Samba simply logging on as a guest. But if you wanted to create a user, like specific user for the Samba share, you can run sudo smb passwd. You will add user. I can call it Marek. And this user has to exist already on this system. And it does exist because I'm logged on as user Marek. But when I press enter, it will ask you to create the password. And this password, you can create the same password as you use for the Android box. But you can also use different password. And this password will only be used for this Samba share. So it's up to you. I will paste mine, press enter, I will retype. That's cool. And now I will just run sudo systemctl start smbd Samba daemon. Press enter. We can see it started, which is a good sign. If I say status, yes, it is up and running for 5 seconds. That's basically it. This Samba share is already configured on my Android box. I can exit this now. I don't need it anymore. I don't even need the terminal. My Android box is already running as a NAS, network attached storage, and I can connect to it. On this Ubuntu system, for example, it would be files, and then I add other location. But how you connect to your box will depend on the operating system. And here I say SMB, Samba protocol, // IP address of my box, 192.168.1.16, and then the name of that share. Oh, it didn't show you, but I called it TV-box. That was the name of my share. And if I say connect, it should connect me to my box. And now I can connect as a guest, or I can connect as the registered user, because I created user Marek, and the password, this is the password for that shared folder, remember, that we have just created. I can remember forever and connect. And this is it. But this folder is empty, but it's TV box on 192.168.1.16. I am connected to my NAS share. So if we copy something to it, well, there is nothing I can copy. 1 second. Let me open the terminal. We are still on this is, I'm not a SSH anymore, I'm on this box. I will create a test file quickly. I say dd input file equals device 0. We will write zeros to our test file. Output file will be my home directory here on Ubuntu, which is home parallels desktop. I will call it test file .txt maybe, and block size I say 1 gig and 1. Press enter. That's it. The file has been created. We can see it there. I'm in the parallels, so I go to desktop. If I run lsl, I can see my file, and it's in fact 1 gig in size. And I should be able to just drag and drop it here to my network attached storage, TV box. Let's do that. And it's going, look at that, copying. It's going 25 megabytes per second, a little bit exceeding. I mean, remember, we are running on the SD card, yes? That micro SD card runs everything on the Android box. It runs the system, it runs the Samba share and everything else. But if you wanted, you could attach like very fast SSD drives, or you can use that internal storage as your NAS storage. But anyways, I'm not going to exceed 125 megabytes per second anyways, even with super fast SSD, because that's the limitation of my network. Remember, this is now network attached storage. And my Ethernet port has only 1 gigabits per second speed. And 1 gigabits per second is 125 megabytes per second. That will be my maximum speed I can achieve when I connect to this Android TV box. But I think that's good enough. That's more than enough for many things. You can store your photos, videos, whatever you want really. And yeah, that's basically it. That's all I wanted to show you. So I hope that's helpful, and thank you for watching.